Well, I was gonna barrow around to my main pike swims, but just out in this little bay here, there's loads of small fish hitting the surface, so I'm just gonna toss a little lure around and see if there's anything there. The perch and a pike are sure to know that those small prey fish are here. So I've cast around these bait fish with a couple of different lures from 2 angles as well, and nothing's happened at all. So I think what I'm going to do is go over to the dead baiting spots that I like to fish and just bear this in mind. If I am struggling elsewhere, I can always come back here. The braid is actually freezing in the rod rings. Yeah, it's about 0 at the moment. First rod going in is going to be this one here. I'm going to float fish a herring close in, and if you think my float looks a bit crazy, it's because my friends Tom and Karina got me a kind of joke Christmas present. It was like a beginner's fishing guide box set thing that had a couple of big floats like this in a stupid looking lure and some useless weights, and well, joke's going to be on them because they actually look quite good for pike fishing. I've tied it to a swivel, got the depth set just a little bit over depth, and I think this is going to work. Yeah, herring to start off with, and I've got a few chunks of fish from previous sessions to throw around it. There we go, so the float's lying flat, and what I've done is I've tightened the line to it until the float just starts moving and just starts cocking, and then I've put it on the bite alarm line in a clip, so I've got 2 forms of indication there, the float and the alarm. The float is bobbing already. Just a small one, let's get it back in there. So second rod is going to be this bad boy here. Popped up bluey, fished off the deck about 2-3 foot, something like that, but we'll look at that in more detail later. Well, I haven't even said good morning yet, so good morning and welcome back to the Dango's Outdoors YouTube channel. If you're new around here, think about subscribing. I try to upload a video every Sunday morning, so that's what you get in return. Now, today I'm out on my first trip of the 3rd lockdown. If you watched my last video, it was a bit of a roller coaster really. We were told we couldn't go fishing, then we can maybe go fishing, then we can go fishing, but we've got to keep it local and we can't overnight. So what I've decided to do is come to my favourite little gravel pit and give it a go here. I say little, it's about 25 acres. It's quite local to me, it's only a short drive, and I thought here's a safe bet for today because I'm away from anyone else and I'm also away from a public who might not know that fishing is allowed, and I just can't be bothered with getting into any arguments. So I thought for my first trip I'll play it safe, I'll come here and do a bit of pike fishing. Now I've already missed a bite and we saw loads of prey fish over in that bay, but we fished them with lures and nothing happened, and since then a couple of anglers have moved in over there anyway, so I probably won't get back there unless the cold puts them off. So since we've had a bite already, I'm fairly confident of another run or two. I've got some bits of fish here to feed when they defrost enough. I should have got them out last night, but I forgot, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's a freezing cold day, it's bright and sunny, but there is a bit of wind on, so yeah, a real nice winter's day to be out. Let's see how it goes. So I've just walked away from my spot about 10-20 yards, something like that. I'm going to try casting the lure around a little bit. Oh, another bite on the float. Yes, we're in. Pulling back a bit. Yeah, you can see that joke float in the water. Hey, it's not small. Hey, quick, I think. Yes, we'll take that one. So as always, get everything ready before we get the fish out. Let's have a look at it. Nice, not big, not small. That second one just fell out. There we have it. Still a jack, but quite a big jack really, I'd say. Getting on for £5 back. Lovely fish on a day like today. Try not to jaw it if I don't have to. Wonderful, lovely markings on here, really dark across the top. Fantastic. Its fins are really orange as well. Great to be back out. I was a little bit nervous about coming out today, but I'm so glad I did. Lovely. Okay, let's let this guy back. Fish of this size is more than likely a male. Brilliant fight. And yeah, my first proper fish of the year. Where are you? There he is. Kicking still. That's the net cord, mate. Let me try and get that for you. Ooh. There it goes. Brilliant. Right, let's get another bait out quick. Oh, it's just kind of hanging down there. So I'm just putting another small herring on my float rig here. So a couple of trebles. Just one in the tail there where you get a decent hook hold. Herrings can be a little bit soft, so yeah, just take your time over this. But another one just down the flank there, towards the back I prefer. And that's that. And a little tip for you on weedy gravel pits is to put your bait out while it's still a little bit frozen, because it's kind of like an ice cube, so it floats a little bit, so it'll settle on top of the weed a little bit better. And I'm going to put this out, and it's just like a waggler. I'll talk you through it. So quite a windy, exposed pit here. So to get around that, we fish with a float, kind of like a matchman would fish with a waggler. So put this out. A little bit further than where we're fishing, put the rod tip under and bring the line back to sink it. There we go, the bait's just touched down because the float laid flat and I felt the tension drop out of the line. Keeping the rod tip under the water. Just going to put it down on the alarms and gently tighten to a float just cocks. There we go, so we're now at a point where when I move the line, the float moves just a little. That's perfect. So we'll put it in the clip, turn the alarm on and we're ready to go. So some of my bits of fish have defrosted enough now, so I'm just going to go throw them around the float in quite a wide spread. Now I don't necessarily believe that brings more fish into the area, but I think what it does do is fish that are already there gets, you know, a bit of blood, bit of smell, some oil going through the water, even the sight of those baits going down will get fish moving and hopefully bring you a quicker bite. So it's time to recast the pop-up rod, seeing as I've got 2 bites on a float and nothing on that, and I'm thinking bringing it a bit closer in and perhaps a bit further to the left as well, where I've caught fish before. See that fair bit of weed around the lead, but nothing on the bait itself, so that's presented really well above that weed. floats away again. Oh, come on. Fish went all the way to the right. There we go, a bit annoying to have missed one, but I could see that fish was moving so far right with that bait that I just couldn't risk leaving it any longer and risking the fish deep hooking itself, so I wound down, felt the fish, it came off straight away. But yeah, we're back out there now. So we're heading into early afternoon now, and it is getting really cold out here. It's 3 degrees but feels like -1 with the wind chill factor. I've just brought in my pop-up dead bait rod. I've had 3 bites on the float rod in more or less exactly the same position every time. So I'm going to put this rod near to that area and see if we can get a bite on this one as well. And I'll show you how I pop up my baits. There's like a million ways to do it, but this is what I do. I'll just thread a length of line through the bait using a stringer needle and then attach a poly ball to it. That gets pulled back inside the bait, and the end of the line just gets tied to a little link that slides up and down the trace. Now you can, if you want to, pre-tie lengths of wire to do this with, but I then find that you're stuck to that length and it's hard to then match up the length of line you've got going through the bait to, you know, that little link of wire that you've made. So I just use a length of line and then tie it off each time. So a little bit fiddly, and my best piece of advice here is to do all this at home. So do the line through the bait, even tie it to the link if you really want to, so you can just clip that on at the start of the session. And in my bucket here I've got another 3 of these, a couple of mackerels and another bluey set up, so if I do catch a fish I can just change them really quickly. So usual 18 inches of wire there, a couple of size 4 trebles, and then a long link down to my weight. So I've got like 2 or 3 foot of line there between my large run ring that just cuts down the resistance and the 3 ounce weight. So this is what allows it to pop up off the bottom. This all sinks into the weed, and then the dead bait sits above it. And what you do is you cast it out, well what I do anyway, cast it out and actually let this float back to the surface, and I slowly bring it back down tight to everything. So this is sitting just above the weed. That's the theory anyway. Hasn't worked yet, but it seems like the fish are very localized. I've had, like I say, 3 bites, but all off the same spot. So we'll give this a go now. So another quick change I'm going to make is I'm going to try drifting a roach. It's what worked for me really well last year. Actually in this particular swim I think I caught 3 fish doing it. So I'm going to give it another go. I've got these nice sized roach here. So I'm just going to put 1 treble in the back. Okay, there we go. So this is set to drift about 2 or 3 foot above the weed, and it's quite windy, so although this isn't the ideal float for it, it should still move around a lot out there. I think the float's going again. Finally, we're in again. That one's a bit better. There it is, pike number 2. Either a big male or a small female at this size. Really nice fish, fought really hard. It's covered in leeches, even got leeches in its mouth and it's ice cold. What I did there was I added about 1.5 foot to my float, so it's drifting just above the weed. And it was a very subtle bite. Normally when you're drifting baits, they just bang the float under, but this one just started drifting the other way, so I can kind of picture it just holding a bait and just slowly moving off with it. Brilliant. Fish number 2, great. Yeah, I think we'll put another roach back out there. Thanks for that, mate. Stunner. Right, again, use the net to give this one the express ride home. Yes, released itself, that one, that's brilliant. Got some jets going over now, and I'm a bit of an airplane nerd. I used to be an air cadet, and I saw my first F-35 Lightnings today, 2 of them, so really happy about that, and those 2 pike, of course. Yeah, 2 great fish, both pulling drag on quite tight clutches, so great fun on a day like today. And since it's done the damage, I might as well show you this float rig in more detail. So a nice strong main line leading down to a bead, and the float running on the line there. And like I said, this is kind of like a joke Christmas present, but I looked at it and thought, actually, that could work really well for pike. So I tied it to an old swivel here, covered it with some rubber to try and neaten it up. And that's been sliding on the line and working perfectly, just like a waggler. And even when I was drifting then, which I normally do with like an inline float, it did the job as well. So coming down, we've got a 12-gram weight just sliding on a line there. And below that, just to protect the swivel, just a little bit of rubber. It's not a bead or anything, it's actually when I've got any old anti-tangle sleeves that are kind of past their best, I just cut them up, and they're what I use for beads to separate weights and things from swivels. And what you find is actually, although it's quite a basic method, float fishing for pike, it works really well for fishing close in on big weedy gravel pits, which you'd kind of consider to be quite an advanced fishing situation. But I think what it is the float slows the descent of the bait as it sinks, especially a light rig like this. Like, that's just 12 grams, it's not like a 20 or a 30 gram float rig, so everything just comes to settle nicely on top of the weed, nice and slowly. As for hooks, pair of size 4 trebles there, covered with little red sleeves that I think do attract fish a bit more. Certainly when I'm looking down in the water at my bait, I can pick it out a lot better because of these red sleeves, and I'm sure the fish do as well. But anyway, it's not going to do any good here. We'll put it back out. I think I'll let it drift around a little bit more of a roach, and then maybe put that herring back on just down the edge for the last hour or so. So we've got another roach to go out there. These are from Yorkshire Angling, and actually the guy there, I can't remember his name, I think it's called James. He was kind enough to go through a big bulk bag of roach and pick out some of the bigger ones for me, and this is actually one of the smallest ones of my bigger ones. I tend to find when I buy roach that I seem to only get little ones. I quite like the big ones. There we go, so one in the back, one towards the head. Let's get it out there. We're now heading into what will likely be the last hour of the session, and really today's been everything I wanted and perhaps needed it to be. You know, to come out when I thought only this time last week that I wouldn't be able to go fishing again for weeks just feels fantastic, and to have caught 2 fish, gotten regular bites throughout the day, just brilliant. And yeah, if this is all I can do for the next few weeks, that's fine by me. So you might find me coming back here again in the next few weeks, because yeah, it feels quite safe here. There's no one walking around. It's relatively easy to get to for me, so it falls well within the regulations, which is brilliant to know that I can do this and do it safely. If you are at home, if you can't get to the tackle shop, something I don't really talk about or don't point out too much on the channel is in the description below. There's always a link to Spotted Fin Bait, and last year they were generous to me and gave me some bait to use throughout the year that I caught a lot of fish on. So if you can't get to the tackle shop, if your local tackle shop is closed, feel free to check that out. Or better yet, buy it from your local shop. It is really good bait, and yeah, I caught quite a lot of fish on it. So the last hour, I think what I'm going to do is probably reposition that ledger rod again. Had the same dead bait on it all day, that's done nothing. I've cast it around a bit. I think what I'm going to do is basically put it right next to where I've been getting the bites for the float, because I really want to catch a fish on it just to justify having to set it all up this morning. And then the float, I'll put that herring back on it and put it on the bottom just over the shelf again, because if we can get one more fish and make it a hat trick, that'd be fantastic. Funny how it's a massive gravel pit, but if anything, my baits have got closer in as the day's gone on. Well, that's me packed up and away, perhaps a bit earlier than I normally would, but one thing the regulations are specific about is that there's no night fishing. Overnight fishing, I think, is what they're meaning, but yeah, I don't really want to take the mick on this first trip. I just want to do everything by the book, and part of the travel advice is that if you are going to drive, to avoid peak times. So yeah, getting away now nice and early. That's brilliant. Caught 2 fish today, exactly what I wanted from today, just to get out and get some bites. Like I said before, this time last week I didn't think I'd be going fishing for weeks, so yeah, really great to get out. If you enjoyed it, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Oh, look after yourselves as well.